It's great to be with you today, and I find myself on an unexpected journey. So I'm from Wisconsin. We've lived there 17 years now. We've traveled around for school and jobs in 6 different states, and so my wife said that we're dying in this house. So I guess that means we're not moving anymore. But we've been in Wisconsin 17 in 2 different areas, and but I made that little Wisconsin cheesehead. I don't know if you're impressed, but I was pretty impressed by that. But maybe I should copy. You think I could copyright that, John? That little cheesehead. So Wisconsin's a cool state. Number 1 in cheese, number 2 in dairy, and so a lot of farms and stuff. I actually grew up on a farm in Iowa. Is actually my background. So one of the things that you'll find with me is and I say this jokingly, but actually seriously as well, is I'm unsophisticated. So one of the things when I was in the corporate world, I was greatly annoyed by the executive meeting PowerPoints, right? Death by PowerPoint. So I'm not into fancy presentations. I'm not here to impress you. I actually am really excited about what I'm talking about, and I ended up writing a book on it. That was never the plan. This unexpected journey is that we had an issue with our health plan, which I'll get into a little bit, at Merrill Steel. So it was a company problem. We actually found a way to fix that sustainably, like not just for a while, but like better care, lower cost. Cost and quality are inversely related in healthcare. And everything else, when we spend more, we expect more. Not in healthcare. Then I found myself kind of leading Wisconsin, along with many others, but kind of leading Wisconsin in this journey. And then now, since the book, now I'm speaking in 17 cities in the first 10 months of this year. So that was not a plan of mine, and it's fun, and I love transformational change. I love helping people. It's actually my root passion. So I worked in human resources just short of 25 years. And what's interesting is that the first 2/3 of my career, my passion was leadership, and then that kind of a great place to work. How can we make this the best place to work? And right, a common nature of things. So, and I still have a passion for that. But we would go through the benefit enrollment meetings. I worked for companies like Toyota and really cool companies where I learned a lot. But we'd go through the enrollment meetings. A lot of times I was, as I was working my way up, giving the presentation was always bad news, and I had to give it. But we'd kind of rush through it, and then we'd move on back to running the business. The last 1/3, so starting in 2016, as John had mentioned, I took the job as the VP of HR. Almost immediately when I showed up, they said the last 5 years we've been going up 9% on average, on about a $5.5 million spend, so that adds up pretty fast. You can do the math. And the owners had been absorbing it fully. They haven't been doing the 80-20 and so forth. And they said, but we can't do it anymore. We don't have it. And so we're either going to have to let our plan kind of unravel like many have, or is there anything we can do? And that was the start of our journey. So that's what started this whole story. I left Merrill Steel a couple of years ago and co-founded with a gentleman named John Barron, co-founded a company named Self-Fund Health. So after we went on this journey, we said, here's a success path for us, and we're going to take this to all companies. So that's what Self-Fund Health is a health plan, not a broker, but we work with forward-thinking advisors to help companies find sustainability. So we had, at the end of that journey, or kind of along that journey, we had won a bunch of awards, and then we had started what we call the Healthcare Best Practice Group. I had become the FMMA chapter leader, Free Market Medical Association. It's kind of the national arm to this. And then Colton is the leader for Iowa, and hopefully Lee's going to be the leader for Minnesota. We'll see. I helped introduce him so we can talk about that. So that would be some of the resources that we have in supporting this. So this was just kind of a brief summary of what we did at Merrill Steel. I want to talk more about the concepts than the details of Merrill Steel, but probably the biggest thing you would say is that when I first realized we were on this unsustainable path, like we're driving toward this cliff, we're not pumping the brakes, we're not turning the wheel, like a lot of employers are doing, right? This isn't sustainable. And so I started looking, I said, what can we do? The owners put that question on me. They said, what can we do? Well, guess what? You know what I knew about healthcare and what's commonly called benefits inside companies, right? Anybody think benefits is boring, by the way? I did. That's why we never look into it. But I had this challenge, so I started looking into it, and I came to the conclusion that there's no way to win with this game that essentially big insurance has handed us. There's no way, I know about deductibles, I know about premiums, I know the game they've handed us, but that game is unwinnable. That's the seller's game. That game is unwinnable for the buyer. So we're gonna have to get out of the box. Then I realized kind of a theme as well, that that's really a monopolistic game. And the free market, I realized, had been suppressed. So what do I mean by that? Anybody eat at a restaurant? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but just for fun, but anybody eat at a restaurant lately, like in the last couple of days? And anybody willing to share, like really briefly? Colton? Okay, so which restaurant did you choose?
We went to a little salad shop down around the corner.
Okay, so first time there?
Yeah.
Okay, so why did you choose that?
Healthy option.
Okay, and how was it? How was your experience?
Well, they were just about out of chicken, so that wasn't great.
Okay,
And it looked like there was a new employee, because one employee was telling that employee what to do, and he wasn't quite understanding what she was telling him to do.
okay, so some training things going on. Would you go back?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
It was good food at the end of the day.
Okay, what would you do if you didn't, if you had a bad experience?
Probably not go back.
Yeah, imagine that, right? So company leaders are very good at managing things, right? And our power as a buyer is to walk away, or not return. If the food's cold, if the service is bad, or the food's way too expensive, or whatever, we simply don't go back. It's very natural. When we start analyzing, as I did, we start analyzing healthcare, we realize that this is not the game. This is a monopoly game. I'm in network. Is that restaurant in network? I'm sorry. You have a bad experience, where can you go? You can go straight back there and smile. And you get the bill 3 months later. Just all sorts of weird things, right? Anybody old enough to play the game? I don't know if this is a prominent thing. There's some younger folks in the room, but the game Monopoly? I'm old enough. So we're parents and we're foster parents, and I got grandkids now, a couple years old. So I tell my kids I was born in the 1900s. I'll be 51 in July. But what happens at the end of the game of Monopoly? Like what's the end of the game?
Everybody's broke except one.
Everybody's bankrupt, right? And I think that's where we're headed, because there used to be BUCA with an H on the end, and then Humana went to the government side, and then the hospitals are consolidating, and everything's becoming more monopolized. And so this movement, this first was Merrill Steele just doing it, and then a few other companies in the state as well were doing similar things, but then the state, and then in Wisconsin, but now other states and national, is to open up the free market. We want to be able to shop for healthcare. We want to know the price, we want to know the quality, we want to know the accessibility, we want a choice. As simple as that sounds, that's a big theme. So that's a lot of what we did here. We started with a DPC clinic, direct primary care. Then we realized there's a lot of money after that. We call it DSC, direct specialty care. That we had this truck pull up, and we realized we could get an MRI for $600 instead of $6,000. And I guess that was the same truck that went to the hospital. So where was the $5,400 going? In the non-profit hospital's pocket. So something's, as Colton said, something's off here, right? We want to shop, and we want to get value when we shop. So just to give you an idea, hopefully this inspires you. This is many people. As I said, I've been encouraging it and facilitating it and supporting it, but there's many people behind this. One really cool statistic is that the first DPC, direct primary care clinic in Wisconsin, was in 2010, and one of them is still going, one of them is retired. But there was an article in Madison in 2020, I started in 16, we were that DPC's first one, they grew to 37 5 years later. But in 2020's article, it said there were 15 DPCs in the state in 2020. Today there's 100, and actually even this is out of date, 124. Right, isn't that cool? So we're averaging over 25 new DPC clinics each year. I hope we can keep that pace up. And then some other headlines, you know, we start to look at the DSC things where a lot of the big dollars are. Infusions, if you don't know what they are, that's when you go and you sit in the chair, like in TiVo for Crohn's disease or cancer. You sit in the chair maybe for 4 hours and you have a drip, that's an infusion. The drug may actually cost, they may get it for pennies if they're on 340B, in most cases nonprofit hospitals do, but let's say the drug costs $5,000, but that one sitting could be charged to the employer $25,000. And nobody knows the difference until we start looking into it. But we have 5 regions of Wisconsin, and we're covered now in all areas except for central for surgery. So sometimes you have to drive, we try not to have to drive, we try to keep DPC within 30 minutes or less. But would you be willing, if you could get a free surgery, a hip replacement say, then you drive an hour and a half versus spend $4 or $5,000 to drive 30 minutes, right? It's kind of a no-brainer, we would do that for a car or whatever. Some other things, the Johnson & Johnson case, so employers are now legally responsible as fiduciary of their health plans, just like 401ks. But this person I know, she called me 3 days before she did this. This was an employee, now a former employee, imagine that, because she didn't let go. So that's a little bit of, right? But she called me, she's like, it's coming, and I can't tell you the details, but it's coming, right? But this was, she found that she could get a drug, she has a condition, she could get a drug for something like, I think it was lower, but let's say $70. And then the plan forced her, and she even brought it up to the plan. They said, no, you have to pay the $10,000 plus. What? So these things that just don't make any sense. So we would never do that in anything else. So, and lots of other things. Physicians leaving hospitals, starting new orthopedic centers, like the whole department of SSM, a hospital in Madison, the whole orthopedic department left, 14. I think 3 maybe went back, but they've started a practice that'll be fully operational next year. So cool stuff. That's free market growth. Options for buyers, transparent prices, fair prices. That's all we're asking. We're not against anyone except the monopoly mindset. So Keith Smith is a famous doctor, as Colton mentioned, the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. He wrote the foreword to my book. And I brought a few, so I have whenever I go to events like this, $15 if you're interested, I'll sign it. It's also on Amazon. But that's kind of give you the full education on this topic if you're interested. I wasn't interested until 2016, but once you start digging into this, this can really help your recruiting and retention, and really give you the full picture of how healthcare really works. But this picture, I won't get into too much detail, but the arrows on top are meant, that's the money. So the only buyer in healthcare, of commercial healthcare, which is 70% nationally, self-funded employers. The rest of it's government, but about half and half overall is Medicare versus private. But the arrows on top represent money the employer's aware of. This is all the employers and employees' money. What's interesting is this is some of the things I learned. The money underneath, under the table, if you will, is money the employers aren't aware of. That's still their money though, right? So one of the initial steps is know where all your money is going. That was like, I need to know where all our money's going, because I need to know if we're getting value for our dollar. So when you start turning over those rocks, you realize that the sellers have been winning for 2 to 3 to even 4 decades. And the sellers in general would be like the status quo hospitals, which are a majority of hospitals. They're the true seller, by the way, though. They're offering the service, healthcare, right? Besides the independents, big insurance, and then the brokers, and we'll say status quo brokers, not like the ones here today. But which is the majority, still, the status quo brokers are getting a lot of payments. When I was researching before CAA, which I won't get into, but it's a law that allows you now to request what your partners are making off your plan, not just what you're paying them. Before that even came out, I did that because I was scratching my head. I'm like trying to pull all my partners with me. I'm like, let's go, I see opportunity, let's go, we're gonna do this, and then they weren't, and they were like dragging their feet. I'm like, wait a minute, you're my partners, right? Our network and our TPA, our third-party administrator that processes medical claims, the one that processes pharmacy claims, PBM, etc. They're not coming with me, and I can't figure it out, my broker. you know what I did? I said, I requested how much they were making. I found that they were making about 2 times on the other side what I was paying them, and then I very quickly figured out they're not working for me. So I ended up switching all partners. That was not easy, but worth it. So the book is written in a way that is maybe reflective of me. Like, I like pictures. I always showed pictures, and people, it's just more fun, right? But not in this boring textbook. There's some humor in there, if you like my sense of humor. And then I've also started a private community, so if you're interested, you can scan that. I'm working on a digital online course if you prefer like videos, like over 100 videos going through the book and things like that. So that would be the link. It's called just Healthcare Best Practice Group website. Sometimes giving the big picture and then I'll show you a couple of pictures, but these would be kind of the 3 big steps, if you will. If you say, where do I even start? This is complicated. As I already mentioned, financial, find out where all your dollars are going. If you're HR, for instance, get your CFO involved. They can help, right? That's what I did. The medical, are we shopping for value or are we stuck in a monopoly environment? If you're in a monopoly environment, you're gonna end up like the board game. You're gonna lose, right? Because you have no power. It doesn't matter if you're unhappy, you still have to go back. It doesn't matter if you don't like the price, you still have to go back. And then trustworthy partners. So we'll talk about that. So I had a couple kind of big aha moments. I had taken on the custodial team. There were just 3 or 4, and we had taken that in-house, so they were reporting to me, and I supported them. But the vacuum broke one morning, see, right? Not the biggest event at Merrill Steel, but it was important. It was this industrial vacuum, and we needed to buy a new one. And I found out from our purchasing department that we have this process. Anybody have a process where you have to get 3 quotes? Yeah, right? Pretty common. And so I was doing that, and we figured out pretty fast. In about 30 minutes, we'd buy the same vacuum. We had fixed it several times. It was time. It was less than $500, right? Pretty fast, pretty easy. But I found myself that afternoon just filling out all the forms, and I don't disagree with it, but I was just kind of like, all right, this is taking some time. Went on an easy decision. But I realized that morning I had signed our stop loss insurance, which is the insurance that sits on top of a self-funded plan, basically covering the extremes. We were already self-funded the whole way through. And you know how much that was for? Just around $700,000. And I didn't have any purchasing process. So I realized at the time that like this is off the radar. This is every company, by the way, I think. We're not viewing healthcare as purchasing a healthcare service. It's like benefits. And we don't want to reduce any cost in benefits because recruiting is a big deal. So if we reduce costs, we'll lose out on the benefits. It's actually the opposite. When we start shopping for healthcare, quality skyrockets and cost drops fast. So that was a big aha moment. Realize this reflects the monopoly, right? This is the in-network. And I realized, well, if you sign up for Network C, you'll get a 40% off discount. Anybody ever heard that before? Or, you know, it's better than the 35%. All hospital prices aren't the same, so even if it's, right? So 35% could be less than 40, first of all. But if you sign up for this narrow network, now I've just voluntarily signed away my ability to shop. Whoops, that was a good one, right? I got tricked into that. So we need to shop, so we can't sign away. And there are still our networks, there are independent networks that can help us. So a quick analogy here, and then we'll jump into maybe the most favorite picture that I've used all these since actually back to Merrill Steel. I'm a car guy, so I have mostly 40s, Chevys. I have a 37 I just got, so I like the old stuff. But in the 60s, the big 3 that used to be the big 3, not anymore, but GM, Ford, Chrysler, they had about 85% market share. What was interesting, so I met this guy at Toyota, his name was Ken. He used to be a first-line supervisor back in the old days, in the 70s at a GM plant, when things were a little rough with the UAW. He was a big guy, he wasn't scared, but he told me some stories. So he said, Matt, half of the cars coming off the line didn't even start. This was the quality. They were smoking pot on the line. If you messed with them, they would have a brick through your windshield, or he had this big steel desk and they would turn it upside down on the plant floor as a message to him. So it was kind of hard to deal with the issues, and it was just but the weird thing was that they were all kind of working alongside each other. And by the way, when the cars wouldn't start, it's because they were incomplete. They weren't junk, but if they didn't have this part, well, they couldn't put on the next, they'd start piling them in the passenger seat. So that was the environment, but they were working alongside each other, but they weren't really competing. They could have this poor quality, but they still had their sales, right? Because there were a couple others maybe, but that was it. There wasn't healthy competition. But guess what? Then Toyota comes in the late 80s, builds this flagship where I worked in Georgetown, Kentucky, 3,000 cars every 24 hours that were running 300,000 plus miles, Camrys. Honda in Marysville, Ohio, Nissan in Smyrna, Tennessee, and a whole lot since. But they upped the quality big time, and they forced the big three. When I was actually at Toyota, they passed Chrysler. They became the three. Now they're number one, Toyota. And I remember the trainer saying, yeah, my Camry's got 300 and some thousand miles. I guess I should get a new one. All I've done is tires and brakes and battery. Wow, right? Very different. Anybody get old enough to ever gather around the odometer at 100,000? I've done that. And you're like, hey, everybody, here it comes. And like, that was a big deal. It's like, this car is really good, right? Now that's like low miles or something. So the whole automotive, if we look at what happened in the automotive, when we introduced more competition, when we introduced free market, it was much better for the consumer, and it forces them to get their quality up and their prices down, or they're not there against what is a monopoly, right, type environment where you can get away with bad quality and high prices. So I label that current, and this is kind of a favorite picture. This is future, but this is the model. And so this is what like our self-fund health plan looks like. This represents the direct primary care clinic. And so you can think of it kind of as dirt road. That meant to be less traveled. In our plan, the way we do it, and the way I did it at Merrill Steel, you can take that dirt road anytime you want, but if the plan pays more, you're going to pay more. So that's basically your current plan. And your same or similar deductibles and premiums, etc., right? But if you go this way, this was the independent free market. Now I hope someday they'll actually come over. It's going to force them. That's the don't feed the beast. Quit feeding them. They're not playing fair. They're charging you 5 times for what they should. $100,000 for a knee surgery, we can get it over here for 20 at a better surgeon. So if you go over here, if the member goes over here, guess what? 0. It sounds crazy, right? $0, yes. Because the employer will pay 100% of $600 for an MRI than 80% of $6,000. It's cheaper over here for both, for the member and the plan. And this year's claim costs are next year's premium increase. We're so used to just looking at the card. Okay, that's good. That's what I do if I was a member. But the problem is on the plan side, if the plan blows up, now my premium blows up. I'm still, right? I still have no future. So here we manage the total cost, but we also give the members free care. And we have oncology here now, infusions, cancer, we have cardiology. About 80% of care we have other options for. If the member wants to go here, they still can. It becomes pretty rare as they catch on, but they still can. So it's an easy change process as well. We're not forcing anything. But this is what I'm now saying is the future of healthcare. The free market is the future of healthcare. It's becoming pretty obvious as I travel around all these states and so forth. So a couple of videos to close out here. Well, one of the things, I'll touch on this, one of the things I talk about is trustworthy partners. Anybody see this already? Yeah, smiling. So trustworthy partners are really key. The CAA had many parts, but it said by December of 23, so just recently, employers have to remove gag clauses from their contract. That means your claims data that the carrier won't let you see because they've put a gag clause in there. It's your claims data. You need to be able to manage your cost and your spend. So they said you have to remove it. You know, my question is, that's great, I guess, but you're going to pay an attorney to review a contract, probably thousands of dollars, to get the gag clauses out. Why are you working with a partner that isn't sharing your data? That's what I ask. So as I came in one morning at Merrill Steel, I wrote all my partners on the board, and I realized none of them were trustworthy except the DPC I just started. None of them. And so that was you'll see a tractor, if you have an interest in the book, I was run over by a tractor midway through this journey, literally, a 4,000-pound tractor. I shouldn't even be standing here. But that was my motivation. I had a bad healthcare experience, I had a bad fraudulent billing experience, things I didn't even receive, and I couldn't fight it, and so forth. And so that was my motivation. I switched all partners at that point. But the concept of trustworthy partners, you know, if I said, do you trust your mechanic? I bet you would say yes, or you'd get a new mechanic, right? Is that fair? Do you trust your plumber? Yet when it comes to healthcare, it's like, yeah, I can't get in 3 months, and I only get 7 minutes. It's rushed care. So we've got to ask the same question. So this was a trust activity in Kansas.
Fall, and it'll be an exercise in building trust between one another. So Harrison, if you don't mind going first, step up here on this chair and close your eyes. All right, and then everybody fill in, and we're gonna ask you to fall, and then they will catch you. So you have to trust us. I'm gonna count to 3, just relax and fall, okay? 1, 2, 3. No, wait, no!
You might never do that again. All right, one more, just real short clip, but just to kind of leave you with some humor and so as I was going through this, I would say at the pioneering stage, right? Hardly any of this existed. It wasn't proven. I did find a few employers in Wisconsin that were doing similar things that I was. In fact, 6 mature stories now that all saved over $5 million, 2 of them over 10. So I wasn't the only one. I thought I was. I met them midway or afterward. Very similar free market thing. So this is really now a proven way. But just the same, there are still new things, right? I don't know where, like how many BPCs in Minnesota, for instance, right? You guys have 2 clinics. I'm sure you're growing, and we can help you with that. And if we would bring our plan in, right, and others. But as the free market grows, it's better for the consumer. So sometimes, and the point is that we get stuck in the box, and sometimes we say, wow, no one's done that before. This is a new idea, and others have touched on it. It's have courage and say, you know, we already have a broken system. It's already broken. So we could do nothing for like the next 45 years. That's what a full career is. I always say that's a long time to watch the clock and deal with it broken, or we can try to fix it. It's already broken though. We already kind of have nothing to lose, right? It's already broken. So, and by the way, if we're expecting the healthcare industry to fix this problem, it's not one of the things to realize, and that's what a lot, like somebody's gonna fix this eventually, right? It's not a problem for them. That was a big aha moment. They're all making a lot of money as Colton had the billions of the insurance. So it's a problem for the buyer, but not the seller. So the buyers have to fix this by forcing a free market. So this little guy, I think they even say at one point, where's your team? But I certainly felt like this at times. In fact, my own team didn't even join me, I think, for about 3 to 4 years. They kind of faked it for a while. They told me later, they're like, we didn't think this was gonna work. And so I was almost alone, but building that coalition, sometimes it feels like this, but if you can hear the where's your team. So, there might have been a travel in there just a little bit. We're going to look past that for now, right? He was like 1 on 4 here. But I would like to see him when he's like 20, right? Because he's going to go after something. He's going to help people. And that's always been my passion is how can I help people? Like when I was in HR, I viewed it as a responsibility. Like I'm leading these people. They're coming to me and saying, can you help us? And so I actually, in the enrollment meetings, write bad news, bad news, bad news. I got in front of them and I said, I'm learning here. I'm learning a lot. We're going to try some things. I don't know how they're going to go. I know now because I know this is a proven way, but I didn't at the time. I said, I'm going to do my best. I think they look good, but I'm going to get up in front of you every year and I'm going to tell you how it went. Well, we went first year, frozen premiums. Second year, frozen premiums. Third year, frozen premiums. They're on their 7th or 8th year. Frozen premiums. So after about the 3rd or 4th, they started to get excited about these meetings, right? They're like, they started to send me articles on healthcare. a topic that we all thought was boring a few years ago. And so, that's the kind of, if you have a fighting spirit and you wanna help people, sometimes you have to push through. So here's my email if you ever wanna reach out. I'm on LinkedIn if you wanna connect. There's that private community which I've just started, so. I'll close actually with this. This is the last end of the book here. Now this implies that we're active and we're pushing the free market, and I think we're seeing that in Wisconsin and a few other states. So, but I hope Minnesota and Iowa and Illinois we're talking to right now, I hope that this would be the same nationwide. So here's, I called it the future of healthcare. This is literally the end of the book. The future of healthcare is transparent. The future of healthcare is affordable. The future of healthcare is accessible. The future of healthcare is sustainable. The future of healthcare is understandable. The future of healthcare is relationship oriented. The future of healthcare is to shop effectively. The future of healthcare is to provide only treatment that is necessary. The future of healthcare is to treat root causes, not just symptoms. The future of healthcare is employers taking fiduciary ownership of their health plan. The future of healthcare doesn't feed the beast who is oppressive and self-serving. The future of healthcare is a positive sum win-win outcome for all. The future of healthcare is much brighter, and the future of healthcare is in your hands. So, great to be with you today. And